Thanks very much. We have reached the hour of 5, so I will now call this Committee of Adjustment meeting to order. We always like to start with a little song to kick off the meeting, so you're welcome. I'll start with the land acknowledge statement. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabeg, people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. And we further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as their traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse peoples. So I will ask for that the agenda be approved as presented. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Committee Member Glenn, seconded by Committee Member McMillan. All those in favor? And that motion is carried. I'll ask for a declaration of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, I'll remind the committee members that if you feel a declaration of pecuniary interest is in order, you can make a declaration at that time during the meeting. So I'll ask for a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the June 2023 Committee of Adjustment be approved. That's moved by Committee Member Glenn and seconded by Committee Member Ladresse. All those in favor? That motion is carried. So we'll move to the new business. And the first order of business is the minor variance application for A-03-23 Mohammed Islam. This is a meeting of the Committee of Adjustment to consider the application for minor variance for Mohammed Islam under Section 53 of the Planning Act regarding property located at 502-531 Grey Road 1. Mr. Secretary Treasurer, please go ahead with your review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There have been no requests for deferral or withdrawal of the application. Notice of this minor variance in accordance with Ontario Regulation 19796 made under the Planning Act was given on June 8, 2023 by ordinary mail to all property owners within 120 meters of the property, which is subject to the application and to all the required agencies. Notice was also posted on the subject lands and the township's website. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment, you must make a written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee. Only a person or public body that requests a notice of decision of the Committee in respect to this proposed minor variance may submit an appeal.
Thank you. Could the planner give us a summary of the planning report regarding this file?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minor variance application A-03-23 seeks relief to section 5.4 of the zoning bylaw to reduce the required front yard setback off of Grey Road 1 from 23 meters to 18.9 meters to permit a detached residential dwelling to be built on the property. No other relief to the bylaw was requested. The application was circulated to various agencies for comment, and we did receive comments from the County of Grey Transportation Services, and those comments were dated March 30th, 2023, and they noted that the setback exemption request of 18.9 meters from the center line of Grey Road 1 was approved from their perspective. County of Grey Planning and Development Services provided comments on June 26, 2023, and they noted no concerns with the variance application, provided that a karst assessment was completed, and I should note that one was completed, that tree removal is minimized and occurs outside of the breeding bird season, and an entrance permit be obtained from the Grey County Transportation Department. The Grey Sauble Conservation Authority also noted that permit GS 22-020 was that authorized the proposed construction of the The dwelling was issued on June 2nd, 2022. So in kind of conclusion, that the variance that's required to facilitate the construction of the dwelling satisfies the 4 tests of a minor variance under a under the Planning Act. Basically, that the variance must be minor in nature. It must be appropriate or desirable use of land, building, or structure. It has to meet the general intent and purpose of the official plan and maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. So all of those have been met as far as staff is concerned. As such, we're recommending that application A0323 be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Planner. I now call upon the applicant who may wish to make comment on this application. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning. Do we have an applicant for this agenda item? Okay, seeing none, I will now call upon any members of the public who may wish to make comment on this application. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning. Okay, seeing none, I'll make one last call for any public comment. Right, thank you very much. So I'll turn to the committee. Is there any points raised by the planner, applicant, or public that the committee wishes to respond to? Seeing none, I will now call for a motion on the decision. The recommendation is that application A-03-23 for Muhammad Islam requesting relief from section 5.40 of zoning bylaw 2020-20 to reduce the required front yard setback off Gray Road 1 from 23 meters to 18.9 meters to facilitate construction of a single detached dwelling on private services satisfies the 4 tests of a minor variance as required by the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP13. It is recommended that application A-03-23 be approved. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? That vote is approved. I will now call for adjournment of this hearing. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by committee member Ladresse, seconded by committee member McMillan. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Committee member Glenn, I think that when you hold your hand up, your hand is a little bit off screen for us here, so you need to hold it. Yep, that's perfect. If you can do that, thanks very much. Okay, we'll now move to item 6.1.2, a severance application for B-07-23, Gray Sauble Conservation Authority. This is a meeting of the Committee of Adjustment to consider the application for severance for Gray Sauble Conservation Authority under Section 53 of the Planning Act regarding property located at 130 Old Mill Road, Plan 483, Part Lot 5. Mr. Secretary Treasurer, please go ahead with your review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There have been no requests for deferral or withdrawal of the application. Notice of the severance in accordance with Ontario Regulation 19796 made under the Planning Act was given on June 8th, 2023 by ordinary mail to all property owners within 120 meters of the property, which is subject to the application and to all the required agencies. Notice was also posted on the subject lands and the township's website. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment, you must make a written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the committee. Only a person or public body that requests a notice of decision of the committee in respect to this proposed severance may submit an appeal.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary Treasurer. Could the planner give us a summary of the planning report on this file?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Application B0723 is a severance application that proposes a 0.1 hectare lot addition to the adjacent 0.2 hectare property identified as 126 Old Mill Road to correct title. The Gray Salvo Conservation Authority owns lands that are located at 130 Old Mill Road in Oxenden, and those lands contain actually the garage and septic system that's associated with the neighboring lot located at 126 Old Mill Road. So the application is essentially to correct the title to provide a lot addition from the Conservation Authority's lands that contain the garage and septic system and have those lands transferred to 126 Old Mill Road. The Secretary Treasurer noted the application was sent out for consultation. The only responding agency was the County of Grey Planning Development Department, and they provided comments on June 26, 2023, noting no concerns with the subject application. As noted in staff's report, it's been demonstrated that the proposed application is consistent with the 2020 provincial policy statement, conforms with the county and township official plans, and complies with the general intent and purpose of the Township of Georgian Bluffs zoning bylaw. It is therefore recommended that consent application B0723 for the Gray Salvo Conservation Authority be approved subject to conditions. And if you would like, Mr. Chair, I can read those conditions.
So these are not conditions included in my recommendation. Is that where you're?
They do follow later in this.
Pardon me, they do follow.
They are.
That's okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your report, Mr. Planner. I now call upon the applicant who may wish to make a comment on this application. Please state your first and last name prior to beginning. Do we have a representative from Gray Salvo with us tonight? Seeing none. I now call upon any members of the public who may wish to comment on this application. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning. Seeing none, I'll make one last call to the public for any comment. Okay. Are there any points raised by the planner, applicant, or public that the committee members would like to respond to? Okay, it's a quiet group tonight. Seeing nothing, I will now call for a motion on the decision. The recommendation is that it has been demonstrated that the proposed application is consistent with the provincial policy statement 2020, conforms with the county and township official plans, and complies with the general intent and purpose of the Township of Georgian Bluffs zoning bylaw 2020-20. It is recommended that the consent application for B0723 for the Gray Salvo Conservation Authority be approved, subject to the following conditions. 1, that the reference plan be completed and a copy filed with the municipal clerk, or an exemption from the reference plan be received from the land registry office. That the application is for a lot addition only, and that the lands to be severed be merged under the same ownership as the abutting lands. Plan 483, Part Lot 5, Pin 37022-0075. LT 126 Old Mill Road, and that the subsection 3 or 5 of the Planning Act shall apply to any subsequent conveyance. 3, that a copy of the registered deed to the abutting lands, Plan 483, Part Lot 5, Pin 37022-0075 LT 126 Old Mill Road shall be filed with the Township of Georgian Bluffs Committee of Adjustment. 4, that pursuant to Section 53, Paragraph 42 of the Planning Act, the certificate of consent be affixed to the deed within 2 years of giving the notice of decision, or as specified in the Planning Act at the time of the deed stamping. Note, Section 53, Paragraph 43 of the Planning Act requires that the transaction approved by this consent must be carried out within 2 years of the issuance of the certificate, i.e. the stamping of the deed. 5, that the applicant pays the applicable consent certification fee at the time of certification of the deeds. And finally, that a zoning bylaw amendment be in force, amending the zone on the severed lands from environmental protection to residential 1. I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder. Moved by committee member Glenn, seconded by committee member McMillan. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask for discussion first. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that recommendation is approved. I'll now call for an adjournment of this hearing. Looking for a mover and a seconder, moved by committee member Glenn, seconded by committee member Ladresse. All those in favor? This public meeting is now adjourned. Should have had you read that one out, or maybe we can take turns. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, a severance application B-08-23 for Janet Robinson. This is a meeting of the Committee of Adjustment to consider the application for severance for Janet Robinson under Section 53 of the Planning Act regarding property located at part lots 1 to 4, concession 3. Mr. Secretary Treasurer, if you'd please go ahead with your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There have been no requests for deferral or withdrawal of the application. Notice of the severance in accordance with the Ontario Regulation 19796 made under the Planning Act was given on June 14th, 2023 by ordinary mail to all property owners within 120 meters of the property which is subject to the application and to all the required agencies. Notice was also posted on the subject lands and the township's website. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment, you must make a written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the committee. Only a person or public body that requests a notice of decision of the committee in respect to this proposed severance may submit an appeal.
It's always there to catch me. Could the planner give us a summary of the planning report regarding this file?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The application B-08-20-23 is a severance application that proposes a surplus farm dwelling severance. The owners, Mr. and Mrs. Robson, actually this property is in Janet Robson's names, are bona fide farmers holding a farm registration number, and they farm several properties on Bush Road 10. The property subject to this application has an existing house, garage, and storage barn that they don't require for their own purposes, and we're requesting that those lands be severed from the larger farm holding. The farm property itself is almost 40 hectares in size. It's 39.8 hectares, and they're proposing a 0.8 hectare severance for the house, garage, and storage barn. Down to comments received. The only comments received on this one were from the County of Grey Planning and Development Services. Their correspondence dated June 26, 23. County planning staff noted no concerns, noting that a farm field entrance will be needed for the retained parcel, as the only entrance right now is associated with the existing dwelling. Entrance permit and separation exemption would be required once the severance has been completed. When you go through the analysis of the contained in the report, which I won't go into the detail right now, but it has been demonstrated that the proposed application is consistent with the 2020 provincial policy statement. It conforms to the county's official plan and complies with the general intent of the township zoning bylaw. It is recommended that consent application B-08-23 be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Planner. I will now call upon the applicant who may wish to make comment on this application. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning. Do we have the applicant for Janet Robinson here tonight? Seeing none. I will now call upon any members of the public who may wish to make comment on this application. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning. Would anybody wish to comment on this application? Seeing none. Okay. Are there any points raised by the planner, applicant, or public that the committee wishes to respond to? I will now call for a motion on the decision. The recommendation is that it has been demonstrated that application B-08-23 for Janet Robinson for lands described as part lots 1 to 4, concession 3, Georgian Bluffs, is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the County of Grey's official plan, and complies with the intent of the Township of Georgian Bluffs zoning bylaw 2020-20. It is recommended that the application be approved subject to the following conditions. 1, that a reference plan be completed and a copy filed with the municipal clerk or an exemption from the reference plan be received from the Land Registry Office. 2, that pursuant to Section 53, paragraph 42 of the Planning Act, the certificate of consent be affixed to the deed within 2 years of giving the notice of decision. Note, Section 53, paragraph 43 of the Planning Act requires that the transaction approved by this consent must be carried out within 2 years of the issuance of the certificate, i.e. the stamping of the deed. That the applicant pays the applicable consent certification fee at the time of the certification of the deeds. That the applicant pays 5% cash in lieu of parkland in accordance with the Planning Act. That the applicant provide a letter from a BCIN designer or a structural engineer verifying that the existing farmhouse is habitable. Thank you, Vic. And finally, that a supporting zoning bylaw amendment be in force and effect to rezone the proposed retained lands to a site-specific zone under the Ag Zone to prohibit the future construction of a new residential dwelling of any type, to recognize a reduced minimum frontage of 145 meters, and to recognize a reduced minimum lot area of 39.2 hectares. I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder. Moved by committee member McMillan, seconded by committee member Ladresse. Is there any further discussion? Oh, sorry. Yep, sorry, committee member Glenn, I didn't see you there.
It's just a question through to you, to the planner. Do we need to add a condition that's been suggested by the county for an entrance on the retained piece for the farm property?
To you, Mr. Chair, to member Glenn. Yes, that's probably not a bad idea to include as a condition. They would have to eventually anyways to get access to the farm parcel, but I think it's appropriate to include that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, at the concurrence of the mover and seconder, we could add that condition.
So I'm going to turn to our secretary treasurer. I have a couple questions. We don't have the applicant here, so I don't know is it appropriate do we apply a condition to them without their involvement, or do we defer this application till we have the opportunity to talk to them about adding the condition?
Mr. Chair, I would suggest that if it were to be a condition that would majorly alter their future works on, future use of the property, then I would suggest perhaps a deferral. But in this case, it's an entrance permit is relatively minor in nature, and it's something that they would have already known with because it's reflecting comments from the county. So I think even though they aren't here, I would suggest that they would be upset if the application were deferred based on one condition such as this.
I tend to agree. I don't know if you have another comment, committee member Glenn, but I'll go to you after. I tend to agree. I just want to make sure we don't run into a procedural problem where we've added a condition. So my suggestion would be, if the committee concurs, with the amendment and we add the condition and we can approve it, and that doesn't procedurally tie the hands of the applicant, I would suggest we go ahead. But I'll look to the committee members for, first I'll look for comments on the suggestion, if there are any, and then I'll ask the mover and seconder if they're willing to agree to the change, the amendment. Committee member Ladresse.
I think going ahead with it because it is kind of an expected condition I think it's fair.
Thank you. So I will turn to our secretary treasurer. I guess, do I ask the mover and seconder if they're agreeable to an amendment of the conditions? Okay. Our mover was. Okay. So committee member McMillan, are you agreeable to the condition change? Oh, you're on mute, sir.
Yeah, yes, it's okay with me.
Thank you. Committee member Ladresse?
I'm in agreement.
Okay. I will call the vote then. Those in favor of the amended recommendation? That recommendation is approved. Thank you. Okay, moving to our next item of business, a minor variance application for A-04-23, Robert Walker. This is a committee, sorry, pardon me. This is a meeting of the Committee of Adjustment to consider the application for a minor variance for Robert Walker under Section 53 of the Planning Act regarding property located at 278 Balmy Beach Road. Mr. Secretary Treasurer, please go ahead with your review. Oh dear, what did I do wrong? Oh, okay. Well, let's do that then. So I'll go back to our last item, which, so you recall, was the severance application for B-08-23 for Janet Robinson. I guess that hearing is still underway until we have a mover and a seconder to adjourn the meeting. Committee member Glenn and seconded by committee member Ladresse. All those in favor? Motion is carried. So I will proceed. I guess we're now just starting the public hearing for the other, so I probably should read it again. This public hearing is a minor variance application for A-04-23 for Robert Walker. This is a meeting of the Committee of Adjustment to consider the application for the minor variance for Robert Walker under Section 53 of the Planning Act regarding property located at 278 Balmy Beach Road. It's the remix. Mr. Secretary Treasurer, please go ahead with your review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There have been no requests for deferral or withdrawal of the application. Notice of this minor variance in accordance with Ontario Regulation 19796 made under the Planning Act was given on June 8th, 2023 by ordinary mail to all property owners within 120 meters of the property, which is subject to the application, and to all the required agencies. Notice was also posted on the subject lands and the township's website. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment, you must make a written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the committee. Only a person or public body that requests a notice of decision of the committee in respect to this proposed minor variance may submit an appeal.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary Treasurer. Could the planner give a summary of the planning report regarding this file?
Mr.
thank
Chair,
you.
we actually have our consulting planner doing this one.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you both. Application A-04-23 for
I'm
Robert.
sorry to interrupt you. Would you mind just giving your name just for the record, just before we start? Thanks.
Absolutely. My name is Marilyn Cameron. I'm a consultant planner for the township. And I'll present application A-04-23 for Robert Walker, which requests relief from the zoning bylaw to reduce the minimum required rear yard setback to 7.5 meters, where 10 meters is required in the shoreline residential zone. This is to facilitate the construction of an additional residential unit in the rear of the subject property. The proposed satisfies the 4 tests of the minor variance as required by the Planning Act. and comments received by the County of Grey have been addressed through the recommended conditions. So it is recommended that application A-04-23 be approved, subject to the conditions outlined in the report. And I'm happy to read those conditions if you'd like, Chair.
I'm happy to read them in the recommendation, unless the committee member has different feelings. Thank you for your report. Okay, I now call upon the applicant who may wish to make comment on this application. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning. Do we have the applicants with us today? Okay, welcome. Hey, we found you. You're welcome to come to the front, and I'll just ask you to give your name for the public record before we start.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Chair. It's Rob Walker, owner of the subject property. I know that hasn't gone through a vote yet, but I'm just wondering if it does approve, if we can reinstate the original building permit that was approved before the minor variance. It's kind of backwards kind of thing there, but that's my only thought.
Okay, I'm looking to the planner for some guidance.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Walker, providing the building permit hasn't substantially changed, or the proposed building hasn't substantially changed from the building permit that was applied for, then I'm sure it can be reinstated.
If I may add to that, Chair, we do have a condition that any required building and sewage permits be renewed. And if I remember correctly, the location of the previously permitted building permit may be different. So if that is the case, we would request that the condition stands, that a new permit be requested, only because that was on the recommendation of County of Grey to ensure that the condition be limited to the building permit area, and that tree clearance be limited to the building permit area. And so we'd like to make sure that that area remains the same. If there has been no change otherwise to the building permit, then I see no reason why that should not be the case.
Thank you, Madam Planner. Do you wish to speak? Okay, sure. Nope, come to the front. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, would there be any additional costs to that arrangement?
Well, that's a good question for the administration. Yeah.
Through Mr. Chair to Mr. Walker, I can, following up from tonight's decision, I can speak with our building officials to determine what the next steps or any associated costs would be with reissuing that application.
Are you satisfied to proceed with the hearing? Okay, thank you. Okay. I'm now going to turn to any members of the public who may wish to comment on this application. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning. Any members of the public wish to comment? Okay, I'll have one last call for any member of the public. Seeing none, I'll turn to the committee. Are there any points raised by the planner, applicant, or public that the committee wishes to respond to? Seeing none, I will now call for a motion on the decision. The recommendation is that application A-04-23 for Robert Walker, requesting relief from the zoning bylaw 2020-20 to reduce the minimum required rear yard setback from 10 meters to 7.5 meters to facilitate the construction of an additional residential unit, satisfies the 4 tests of a minor variance as required by the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13, and it is recommended that the application A-02-23 be approved, subject to the following conditions: that any site works, including destruction of trees, occur only outside the prime bird nesting period from late March to mid-August, and that the destruction of trees be minimized to safely accommodate the proposed development. 2, that the applicants shall restrict tree disturbance during construction to within 15 meters of the building area for which a permit is issued, and that any tree removal on the lands outside this area be subject to the requirements of the County Forestry Management Bylaw and that the applicant obtains any required building and sewage permits from the township recognizing the dwelling location proposed. I'm looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by committee member McMillan and seconded by committee member Ladresse. Is there any further discussion? Question?
Just wondering, if the new permit is to be issued, is there a timeline, that I can, look forward to on that, or is there going to be quite a delay? I'm just wondering, Mr. Chair.
I'll turn to the planner. I don't know that you have an answer to that question, but you're probably closer to it than I am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Mr. Walker. I think that the only perhaps limiting factor or delaying factor, I should say, is that these applications are always subject to an appeal period. I can speak to our chief building official to see how comfortable they are in issuing a permit, but the appeal period is typically 20 days from date of decision. So I'll have to see what our building permit thinks about that, knowing that this is an ongoing building permit application that was actually paused to complete this process. So with that, I really don't have an answer, but I can certainly look into it and get back to the applicant.
So following the vote, I think to our applicant, I think I'll leave you to talk to the administration about that following the vote. Do you have any more comments before I call the vote?
From originally planned, Mr. Chair. I would hope there would be just a quick, seamless movement to reinstatement. I'm hoping. We'd like to get going on it as quick as possible.
Yeah, I can appreciate your position, and I think it's good you've shared your comments with the administration, and our planner can help take that forward. Really, today we want to make sure that we hear your application and make a judgment on that. So the committee members and myself really can't have much of an impact on that, but you've had the opportunity to share that, and my hope is that the administration can take that forward, and I'll let you coordinate with them after today. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm turning the committee. Just anybody have a comment? Any final discussion before I call the vote? Okay, seeing nothing, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Right, that recommendation is approved. I'll now call for an adjournment of this hearing. Looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by committee member Glenn, seconded by committee member McMillan. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. I'll move to our next item of business, which is the severance application for B-05-21 McMinn and Jansen. This is a meeting of the Committee of Adjustment to consider the application for the severance for McMinn and Jansen under Section 53 of the Planning Act regarding property located at Range Colpoys, Part Lot 30, 503139 Gray Road 1. Mr. Secretary Treasurer, please go ahead with your review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Notice of the severance in accordance with Ontario Regulation 19796 made under the Planning Act was given on June 14th, 2023 by ordinary mail to all property owners within 120 meters of the property, which is subject to the application and to all the required agencies. Notice was also posted on the subject lands and the township's website. If you wish to be notified of the decision of the Committee of Adjustment, you must make a written request to the Secretary Treasurer of the Committee. Only a person or public body that requests a notice of decision of the Committee in respect to this proposed severance may submit an appeal.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary Treasurer. Okay, so it is my understanding that agency and county comments have very recently been received that have changed staff's recommendations regarding this file. Could the planner please give us an update on the planning opinion regarding this file?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just looking to our consulting planner to see which one of us wants to take it on. And she's kind of just sitting in the background, so I think I'll probably take this one on. She can assist me. Although it was Maryland's report. So the proposal for application B0521 is a severance application that proposes to create a 0.35 hectare residential lot from a 0.85 hectare parcel containing an existing dwelling and a commercial marina operation. The retained parcel would have a size of 0.49, and that would be continued to be used as the existing commercial marina. A new entrance from Gray Road 1 is proposed to separate access to the marina, and this application was submitted concurrently with applications at 07/20/2021. Originally, staff were considering that or requesting that this application be deferred because we had not yet received comments from County of Gray or the Gray Sable Conservation Authority. Just over the last couple of days, or Friday and yesterday and this morning, we were able to obtain comments from the County of Gray and the Gray Sable Conservation Authority, and they both had positive comments in that regard. So, given the positive feedback from the County of Gray and the Gray Sable Conservation Authority, staff are now recommending that the application be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Planner. I now call upon the applicant or agent who may wish to make a comment on this application. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning. Do we have the applicant with us tonight? All right, great. Feel free to come to the front and please state your name. Yeah, perfect. And then please state your name. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Chair. I'm Milena Jansen. I'm one of the owners of the said property. Yeah, we're just really excited that you are taking this on today because we have been waiting a long time, and I think it is straightforward. I actually haven't received the conditions myself yet, so I look forward to. I think are we going through that? I guess would be one question. But yeah.
It's in the long list of things that I read. Just
okay, perfect. Okay, great. Yeah. Anyway, we have been waiting 2 years plus 3 years really for this application, so it got held up at county, so for their own housekeeping reasons. But thank you for taking this.
I'll open the opportunity for comment after I read the conditions for you. Okay. So I now call upon any members of the public who may wish to make a comment on this application. Please state your first and last name for the record prior to beginning. I don't see any public wishing to make a comment. I'll make one final call for any public who would wish to make a comment. Seeing none, are there any points raised by the planner, applicant, or public that the committee wishes to respond to? Oh, yeah, committee member Glenn.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, it's just a procedural matter because we got circulated the agenda along with a staff report that talks about a deferral, but I don't have in front of me anything that would suggest to the contrary. We haven't seen comments from the county or the Conservation Authority, and so as a procedural matter, is it appropriate for the committee to consider the approval of an application when an application was given notice of a deferral as late as Friday?
I see our planners in thought. I'll give him the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to committee member Glenn. It is unusual to kind of proceed you know, as a last, I suppose a last minute effort. The comments from the county and the Conservation Authority were emailed to committee members earlier this afternoon. And given the timing of those comments, it didn't really give staff much of a chance to provide an updated report. Although we had considered that, but it was been difficult given the timing to get the report circulated and what have you, and add it into our system. So if the committee wishes, we could perhaps have further discussion on the County and Conservation Authority comments. But we could also, yeah, I'm not sure how to proceed procedurally. I think perhaps it's a discussion we might have to have with our clerk's department through Rayburn and what have you.
So I think, committee member Glenn, I'm wondering about your question. So, did you have the opportunity to get the materials today? And your question is more about, did the public have the opportunity? Did other people have the opportunity to review the information?
Yeah, the committee got material today that suggested that we were going to change our position, but there's been no public notice that there's going to be a report going forward. There's no public notice of a recommendation going forward. The only thing that is in the public realm at this point that I can see is that there's a deferral request on the application. And
right.
Are we in a difficult position procedurally? I'm not questioning the validity of the application. I'm questioning procedurally, are we in a difficult position to issue a decision when on the public realm it's issued suggesting a deferral? And does that cause a problem going forward if there is an appellant?
Issue a decision when on the public ground it's issued suggesting a referral.
Right. So just to be certain, I think you got right. What you've said is we've published a recommendation by our planning department to defer in our public record, and then we have a subsequent recommendation that the public is not privy to.
That's correct.
We'll go to our planner first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So one thing I wanted to note that it's been my experience that committees of adjustment by their very nature can make recommendations that go completely against a published report or recommendation made by municipal staff. So although a report is before us as recommending deferral, given information that's often presented during a hearing such as this, committee members can certainly make, and it's fully within their power, to make a recommendation that goes against a staff recommendation.
Okay, so I am looking to the committee. Do we have any further comments from the committee? Committee member Ladresse?
I'm in agreement. I don't have a problem approving the application, but we do need to make sure that it's procedurally correct.
So I'm just going to rephrase that. I think what your concern is, you don't have a problem reviewing the application, but your concern is, are we following the right procedural approach?
Exactly. Like, I'm just worried maybe that some people from the public wanted to comment on it, but saw it as a deferral. And now that we're recommending approval for it, I just worry that we're not getting the public input that we might get.
Through you, Chair, as per the Committee of Adjustment Procedure bylaw, 15.3 indicates any additional correspondence to the application that's received after the agenda has been made public will be made available to the committee via email. That was done today. I believe I don't have the exact time, but yes, at the end of the day, I believe it would be in the committee's hands.
So before we proceed, I think, so our applicant, would you like to have the opportunity to speak? Go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. My apologies, I didn't get an opportunity to hear Michael's report because I did lose my connection, but I can just thank committee for hearing us out today and hopefully moving this application forward. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Genevieve Scott, and I work with Questa Planning Consultants, and we've been working with the applicants, Ms. Milana Jansen and Mr. John McMinn, to prepare the planning report and associated applications for zoning bylaw amendment and the consent before you today. And essentially, the subject lands, which are located at 503139 Gray Road 1, they're owned by 4 equal owners. And at the end of the day, what they'd like to do is split the 2 uses that are on the property. There's a marina use as well as a residence. So the end result of the consent would be a lot of approximately 5,000 square meters for the marina use and a lot of approximately 3,500 square meters for the detached residential use. And just to give you a bit of background, we did submit the consent application quite a while ago. At the time we submitted, it was the parcel was rurally designated in the county official plan, and through their official plan amendment number 11, it was held in abeyance until OPA 11 came into effect. What OPA 11 did was redesignate the parcel from the rural designation to inland lakes and shoreline, which allowed us to move ahead at that point in time with the zoning and the consent. So it's a fairly simple application. It's consistent with the provincial policy statement. It can remain compatible with the rural character of the site as well as the surrounding area. It conforms to the relevant policies of the Grey County official plan, as both inland lake shoreline and hazard designations permit resource-based recreational uses. And we feel separating the 2 uses on the site to make sense and is appropriate. We did have an opportunity to review the proposed conditions with Planner Benner, and we have no concerns in regard to those proposed conditions. And we want to thank staff for their assistance in moving this forward. And if anyone has any questions at this time, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Madam Scott. Yep.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say really quickly that I think we got held up in the county, but here with the changeover in staff, we started with your previous planner, then the consultant planner, and now we have Michael, which is great. But it meant that the public notices actually went out really long time ago. We've gotten like 0 feedback from, like, zero negative feedback from the whole neighborhood, which we know our neighbors all quite well. So I just thought I would add that if that's a concern in terms of, notice.
Yeah, I think that, thank you for your planning report. Thank you for your comments. I'm certainly sensitive to your position. I think if I'm summarizing the concerns that we've heard, it's that our public record, we received comments from outside agencies after our public comment, and that's our challenge. I'm turning to the committee. We don't have a motion. We don't have a motion read yet, but I guess what I would look to the committee to say is, do we want to put the recommendation on the floor? I'm going to need a motion. I'm going to need a mover and a seconder. I'm not sure whether to read the recommendation at this point or not. Mr. Planner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just actually reading through the Committee of Adjustments procedural bylaw, and thank you to our legislative coordinator for sending that over. And section 17 of that bylaw speaks to public meetings. And as you kind of work through the sections, it notes that the first of all, the kind of going what we're doing, the chair asks the planning staff for their information. 17.3 notes the chair shall invite members of the committee to participate in discussions of the application, including discussions regarding the site visits, what have you. Chair also then invites anyone else having interest and concern. So after receiving all those comments, then the 17.6 notes that the committee shall give the applicant authorization or the applicant's representative the opportunity to respond to any comments. Section 17.7 notes that the committee members to the chair can ask questions of the agent or the applicant. And then 17.8 speaks to the motion coming forward. And then 17.9 notes that the committee shall be given an opportunity to discuss the motion and suggest any amendments to the motion. All motions shall be put forward by committee members, and the chair shall seek a seconder for any motion. Any moved and seconded amendment shall be voted on by the committee. And then amendments voted by the majority of the committee shall form part of the main motion. So it's kind of speaking to the fact that there is a lot of discussion that can occur through the procedural bylaw.
I'm inclined to, I mean, this is the public meeting. So for those members of the public wishing to engage in a conversation about the application, whether for or against, this is their opportunity to do so. I appreciate the comments of the committee members. I think I'm inclined to put the motion on the table because that's what we've scheduled to do tonight. And we will let the process unfold from there. That is my suggestion. So I will now read the recommendation. If there are any further comments, I'll put it out there for any further comments before I read the recommendation. Mrs. Scott.
Thank you, your chair. I just wanted to add just another point as well with respect to the public comments. We did last week have the associated zoning bylaw amendment application for in front of council. And at that point in time, we did not receive any comments at all from members of the public at that time. And really, it's fairly commonplace, even if there is a recommendation in a staff report, to receive comments, whether it's for an official plan amendment or zoning or consent, to sort of get them right at the tail end of the commenting period. so that can sometimes make a change in how the committee or council would proceed as well. But we're really hopeful that we can move ahead because we haven't had any concerns to date under the associated zoning bylaw amendment process, and it has been quite some time that we have been trying to move this application forward. So again, I respectfully request that we move ahead with it tonight with the conditions that Mr. Benner has suggested, and thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Mrs. Scott. I see we have committee member Ladresse would like to comment.
I'd just like to comment that I'm happy to move forward. I'm satisfied with the clarifications provided.
Okay. Well, I haven't followed script very well. We did the planning reports at the end and the everything else in the middle. But I'm going to go ahead with the recommendation. Recommendation is that it has been demonstrated that application B-05-21 for Melina Jansen and John McMinn for lands described as Range Colpoys, Part Lot 30, Georgian Bluffs is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the County of Grey's official plan, and complies with the intent of the Township of Georgian Bluffs zoning bylaw 2020-20. It is recommended that the application be approved subject to the following conditions: that the reference plan be completed and a copy filed with the municipal clerk, or an exemption from the reference plan be received from the Land Registry Office. That pursuant to Section 53, paragraph 42 of the Planning Act, the certificate of consent be affixed to the deed within 2 years of the giving of notice of decision. Note, Section 53, paragraph 43 of the Planning Act requires that the transaction approved by this consent must be carried out within 2 years of the issuance of the certificate, i.e. the stamping of the deed. That the applicant pays the applicable consent certification fee at the time of the certification of the deeds. That the applicant pays 5% cash in lieu of parkland in accordance with the Planning Act. That an encroachment agreement be entered into with the Township of Georgian Bluffs for works located within the shoreline road allowance. And finally, that a supporting zoning bylaw amendment requesting relief for the proposed lot areas, lot frontages, and accessory structures be in force and effect. So I'm going to put this on the floor first, and then we'll get discussion. I know you said you hadn't, I think, so you said you hadn't heard the conditions, and your planner said you heard, so I'll let you guys sort that out. But I'm going to first call for a mover and a seconder. Moved by committee member McMillan, seconded by committee member Ladresse. So I'm going to call for discussion. Yes. So Consultant Scott.
Okay, my apologies. And again, my apologies. I wasn't able to hear Planner Benner's summary because I unfortunately lost my connection. So I was working a little bit in the dark in regard to the motion itself. I just had one quick question, and this is something that I could address later on with Planner Benner, is as both the properties are fully developed out, would there be a need for a cash in lieu of parkland fee or not? That would be my only question with the conditions as proposed. Thank you.
Wish to comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Ms. Scott's questions. Typically, under the Planning Act, a municipality is allowed to request parkland dedications or a cash in lieu of parkland when a new lot is created. We can certainly have those discussions after to see what that that 5% equates to. Usually for fully developed lots, it is a little difficult to determine what that value would be, because it's kind of supposed to be 5% of the undeveloped land value prior to, as if it occurred prior to the Sarms application. So it's kind of a complicated thing, but the Planning Act, in summary, the Planning Act does allow municipalities to request that parkland dedication, and it's just a matter of looking at trying to determine what that value is.
So I'm going to start following the policy. I'm going to start following the procedure now. I think that I'll give my comment before I call the vote and ask for committee members' discussion. I think the parkland fee is something that we've always had here. It's going to be really sticky to start pulling it out for some and not others when we've had it as a standard. So it has been a pretty standard condition of ours, and I would find it problematic to just in one circumstance say, well, let's just pluck it out of here when it's been a condition for all the rest. But I'll turn it to I'll see if any committee members have any other discussion before I call the vote. Okay. Seeing none. I did ask for a mover and a seconder, didn't I? Yes. Okay. I will now call the vote. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed, if any? That motion is approved. The recommendation is approved.
Thank you.
I will now call for an adjournment of the hearing, looking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by committee member Ladresse, seconded by committee member McMillan. All those in favor? The motion is carried. So there is no unfinished business. The Committee of Adjustment will meet as regularly scheduled on August 15th at 5 p.m. And if there's no further business, I will now call for an adjournment of this meeting. Asking for a mover and a seconder. Moved by committee member Glenn, seconded by committee member Ladresse. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion is carried.